what's new on the Burlington waterfront. Hey, now it's happening at the waterfront on Lake Champlain. Whatever the weather, there's so much to do on the new waterfront, the Burlington waterfront.
Hi, my name is Mariah Riggs, and I'm the director of the Main Street Landing Performing Arts Center. This month, I am very excited to have as my guest Orly Yadin, who is the executive director of the Vermont International Film Foundation since 1985. No, that's not really correct. She's been there since 2012. She's a filmmaker, producer, as well as a certified film fanatic.
Certified.
A certified film fanatic. Orly, welcome so much to the show.
Thank you. Wonderful being here with you.
I'm so excited you're here. So I've always wondered, one of my primary questions when I was thinking, okay, I'm interviewing Orly, this is super exciting. I wanted to ask you, what drew you to devoting your life to film?
Well, let me just say that it's not my entire life. I do have other interests.
Yes, no, I know.
Even though you said I was certified. I studied film. I studied film and communication, and I worked in the television and film business, mainly in London, where I lived before coming here. And I taught film. And it's just a fascinating film, cinema. Is one word for such a vast world of art, ideas, ways of communicating. It's not a narrow world. It's the whole world. I mean, you know, we bring the world, we see the world through film. We're all exposed to.
Yeah, I just always wondered. I always envisioned you as like one of those kids who like sat around, you know, watching, you know, Truffaut films, or like, you know, I mean, was that you as a younger person?
I sat around with crayons drawing fairies and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
no,
you know,
film came later, really, when I was about 18 or 19.
Okay, then you really got into it.
Then slowly I got into it, yeah.
And then it captivated your soul.
Well, I just thought it was marvelous.
Well, I couldn't agree.
And you should know too.
I do know. And so, you know, that kind of leads me into my next question, since I have you here. I've always wondered, do you have a particular favorite film?
Ooh. I was not expecting that. Not from you, Mariah. How can one...
have a favorite film?
You know, I met a couple of 20-year-olds just this past week who want to start a career in film but don't know where to start or what to do, what to study, should they become interns, should they go to college, etc. And I always say to them, just watch as many films as you can, because you just learn from those films. And,
yes.
And they wanted titles.
I always just tell everybody the AFI 100, right? You
well,
know,
that's
simple.
One thing, but I was trying to do not only American films, you know, there's films from around the world. I do not have one film, but the last one that I recommended to someone, and it's very different from any other film, but basically any film by Agnes Varda, or Agnes Varda as she's pronounced here, is an eye-opener. To me, it's absolutely wonderful.
So for you, what you find evocative the most about film are films that kind of push the boundary, make you think, talk about social issues?
No, not necessarily talk about social issues. No. I mean, that's fine too. No, they could be just a pure gem, a pure work of art in terms of how they're edited, how they're shot, how they're paced. It doesn't have to be about a subject. Like I'm trying to think of a film that isn't specifically about a subject. There's some Alain Delon films, the amazing French film star of the 60s, 70s. They're never about anything. I mean, there's a story, but there's not a social subject. But they're just perfection in how they're put together. Yes. And it's like watching a painting. It doesn't have to be about something for it to reach you and touch you and make you kind of remember it and think about it. Yeah,
that brings me back to a thought. I had a great professor. Full disclosure, I went to film school. back at Emerson, and one of the most interesting things they ever told me about art was the best art is the art that makes you think about it over and over again and reference it as sort of this touchstone in your soul, something that like evocatively like swept over you.
Absolutely.
And repositioned the frame and made you think about the world in a different way, or for the rest of your life something will happen, you'll be like, oh, that reminds me of that scene in that film.
Exactly.
And that's the power of it.
Yeah, and that's what we mean by films that make you think. It's not that they're giving you information that you didn't know and you say, oh, I'll think about that. No, it's exactly what you said. And, you know, I always say, it's a cliche, I did not invent this, but if a film is worth watching once, then it's worth watching several times. Because if it's a good film, every viewing, you discover new things.
Well, that's like any great art.
Yeah.
Any great piece of art, the more you see it, the more you're able to make it referential and derive more from the experience.
Yeah.
And that's really true.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that, now, that was a wonderful, I always wanted to ask that question. Thank you. Now, you did spend, we just kind of mentioned this, you spent a lot of your life in London. And what did you do while you were there?
I worked in film.
Okay.
I worked for quite a few years. I was actually a film researcher on historical series, you know, that like the kind you might see on certain networks or whatever, World War II, this, that, and the other. I worked on a series about the end of the British Empire, a 13-hour series, and my job was the best job in the world. I was the archival researcher, the footage researcher. So they sent me all over the world, for 2 years, looking for footage that related, and the British Empire was big. No longer, but it was big. So it
The sun never set on the British Empire.
Exactly. It's pretty dark now, but anyway, it was. I felt so fortunate, you know. Here I was being sent to Australia, to Japan, to Europe, to the US, to various countries, looking for footage. So I did that quite a lot. Were
you able to save some footage? I would assume that that project also allowed you to find footage that might have been in a place where it could have been lost forever.
Occasionally, but mainly it was in archives that, you know, did a pretty good job of preservation themselves. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So then I guess that begs the big question. How did somebody from London end up in Vermont?
I wish you hadn't asked that.
Oh, no.
But there's just one answer, and it's got 2 words.
Yes.
A man.
Isn't that what always happens?
I don't know.
I think that's a pretty common.
First time it happened to me.
Well, and here you are.
Here I am.
Here you are. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard that actually a couple of times.
Oh, okay.
So when you came to Vermont, when did you first come across the Vermont National Film Foundation?
Well, actually, the first time I came here, I was just visiting because I'd been invited by the then director of the Vermont International Film Festival to put together, present a program of animated documentaries that I had produced in England. Oh, wow. Because I moved from film research afterwards to making my own and doing, and so here I was, I think it was at UVM on campus in the year 2000. Wow. Presented so that's how I that was my first encounter with VTIFF, as it was then called.
Yeah, that brings us all back.
Yeah.
And what was VTIFF like when you first encountered it? Otherwise, besides the fact that it was called VTIFF.
When I first encountered it, well, I don't have many memories from that year. I remember the program I presented, and I remember who invited me and so on. But I really, once I became a resident here in Burlington in 2004, I started attending the festival just as a guest, and then I volunteered a bit and was asked to do various things. And you know, VTIFF, as it's now known, has gone through, I mean, it has been in existence since 1985, so that's a long time. Do the math, 37 years or something like that. It went through various iterations, and it went through ups and downs as well. It did start actually as a human rights peace film festival in the 80s. And then it added environmental issues. But the first 10 years were really just documentaries about human rights and the environment, social issues of that kind.
Very true.
But there was a period after the person who was the executive director in up to 2006, I believe, when she stepped down, for several years there was no executive director, and it was really held by a shoestring, if you like, by just 3 or 4 people, volunteer board, who did their best, but it's really hard to make an organization of, well, a festival work, you know, without having somebody. So I did join the board, but then I stepped down, became a director.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add. That's what leads me to my next question perfectly. Thank you. You must have read my mind.
I must have.
You took the mantle of executive director in 2012. What do you think has been the most significant change to the festival since you came on board?
I think the most two, I would say possibly 2 things that are very different things. One is that the festival, the Vermont International Film Festival in October, that's coming up soon, oy vey, is no longer, first of all, just documentaries. We show all styles and genres of film, you know, documentary, fiction, animation, short, feature length, you name it. We like to show a range, and it's no longer just a social issue festival. We treat cinema as an art form, which doesn't mean to say it doesn't also include you know, some films that definitely are trying to address social issues around the world. So that's one difference. The other difference is that we changed gradually from being a 1 event a year organization to a year-round organization, and we now run 3 film festivals a year.
Which was exactly my next question.
Well, I've answered it.
I know, I love this. So I think we should definitely discuss the 3 different festivals that the Vermont National Film Foundation, which is part of the name change. Once they started doing multiple, thank you, Orly, the multiple festivals, they went to a foundation. And so
not quite. It was, but
okay.
that's the
my
that's
general
the parent.
understanding, yeah.
That's the parent.
Yeah, it's the parent company. And so I really wanted to talk to you about the 3 different festivals, because some of our viewers might not be aware that there are 3 separate festivals that happen throughout the year in Vermont.
Yes. So the first addition to the Vermont International, we started about, I think, 2014, and we called it Global Roots Film Festival. And it initially started with the aim of focusing specifically on films, on cinema that came from the countries of origins of new Americans in Vermont. Not films about them, but cinema that was actually made in those countries, because we realized, you know, what do we know about all these people who have come to settle here, you know, whether as refugees or immigrants. Mostly we hear about the awful things that drove them away from their country of origin to here, but we don't know anything about their rich culture. So that's what we started, films from Iraq, from Serbia, from Somalia, from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and many more. And we did that for a few years. And it's gradually expanded, the Global Roots Film Festival, basically to become, unlike the Vermont International, which is a panorama of world cinema, Global Roots is a shorter film festival, and each year we choose a different theme or topic and just zero in on that topic. So we've had like film and disability, Global Roots Film Festival, film and disability. We've had food and music. This year, it was in late February, early March, we had indigenous cinema. We've had the history of the musical film. And I'm now thinking about what will happen next March.
And do you know?
I have some thoughts. I'm not going to divulge them. You can't. I'm not going to tell you everything,
All right, we have to wait.
Mariah.
We have to wait. She'll let me know sometime soon,
course.
hopefully.
Hopefully,
so,
because we're going to hold it at Main Street Landing Performing Arts Center.
Yes, I would certainly hope so. But I also want to talk about the Made Here showcase, because
Yeah.
I do think that is a huge gift to the Vermont film community.
Yeah. So the Made Here Film Festival, as it's now called, as of last year, is, as its name suggests, it's a regional film festival. It's films by filmmakers who reside in northern New England and our neighbors to the north, Quebec. So Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, northern New York State, and Quebec. And again, it's a shorter festival, but it's it did evolve from something that used to be called the Vermont Filmmakers Showcase that was part of the Vermont International. But sort of, I was thinking about it a lot, and the problem with states like Vermont, where the population is really quite sparse, it doesn't allow for a big range of filmmakers numerically. So we thought, well, why not expand to our neighbors, and also with the hope that the filmmakers will meet each other and new projects will evolve, you know, partnerships. So that's what it is.
And also to drive the economy of film in Vermont.
Yeah, so make people more aware of
Yes.
what's happening. And
I
the
mean,
last
it would
one,
be a lovely location to shoot a film.
it would certainly be that. That's, yeah.
Did I mention?
Did you mention?
I
Yeah.
have to say that. So when is, I know we're getting close, when is the Vermont International Film Festival happening this year?
It's from Friday, October 21st till Sunday, October 30th. We always like to start on a Friday and finish on the following Sunday, so that we have we have 2 weekends that are like bookends, because obviously they're more popular, people are freer to come, and the 5 days in between.
And so how do you pick the films for the festival?
Well, unlike most festivals, we don't have an open submission platform online where filmmakers just submit films and then they get selected. This is a curated festival, which means that it's by invitation. And we have a programming committee, I believe, which I chair, which I believe we have 8 programmers. And what's great about that is that they each have a different range of knowledge, different taste in films, so they come from different ages. So they each bring something to the table, which hopefully represents the community at large.
And all of them are volunteers.
It's on a volunteer basis, yes.
And so I think that's really important to note, is that VTIFF is also a grounds up festival.
Absolutely.
And so it actually comes from the Burlington community, it comes from the Vermont community, the input is from our community. And I would also encourage people who are watching this to go to the VTIFF website. It's www.vtiff.org, and check it out, because there's amazing volunteer opportunities on there. If you're interested in film, if you want to learn more about film, if you want to get involved with VTIFF, they do great things. They have to watch all these films and decide what end up in the festival. And if you want to engage or work at the festival, if you want to get involved, make sure you go to the website, because it's a great opportunity if you love film to really become engaged with it, especially world cinema and everything that's happening currently, which is very, very exciting. It's a wonderful opportunity.
When you lose your job as the director of Main Street Landing Performing Arts Center, can I hire you as a marketing director?
It's okay. Hopefully I don't lose my job anytime
Right.
soon. Yes, no. So I also, going back to the festival this year, is there anything special? Like, I know they usually do an overarching theme every year. What is special about this year?
Yeah, there's no real theme as such. The other 2 festivals have inherited themes. Well, we obviously we tried the whole selection of films is a really long process, which we've only just finished. We started in May. And, you know, we watch hundreds of films between us, and everybody says what they like, and I negotiate with distributors and so on. But we try as much as possible to represent different parts of the world. and different styles of film. So that's, you know, so even if we had a list of, you know, say 40 films, but all American, that would be no good, or all French, or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the crucial point that we come to towards the end of the program. We look at everything we thought was good, and then we start saying, okay, do we have enough representation, basically it's all about diversity, and diversity in a range of ways.
Yeah, because I've always thought of it as this great umbrella snapshot of sort of world cinema that is curated for you, that you get to experience, that is brought to you by this incredible foundation. And in a place like Burlington, where we really don't get the opportunity to see these remarkable films that have come out over the past year, and they're from everywhere. And it's a selection of some of the most unique, and I love how you talked about how there are different types of film, because that is true. Like there are documentaries. Sometimes they're like the point of view stuff. Like if some of you have seen something like The Blair Witch, where it's like more of like a handheld, kind of like, you know, cinema verte type style cinema, right? Or then there's also like the big, more blockbuster, but it might be more of a Bollywood blockbuster, amazing extravaganza type film. So all those things kind of are wrapped up into one in 1 week. And so I guess that gets us to the exciting question. What movies are you excited about showing this year? Do you have some highlights for us?
I'm excited about all of them, of course. But I could mention a few, and I have my little crib sheet here because I've watched so many films that I don't want them to become a blur. But just as a few examples of different types of film, in no particular order, there's a wonderful, some of you who, if you're watching this and if you've attended the festival, you may remember an animated documentary last year called Flea that ended up getting an Oscar, or several awards, several Oscars possibly. Well, we have an animated documentary this year from Czechoslovakia, from a wonderful animator who I remember from way back, called Michaela Pavlatova. And the film is called My Sunny Mad. And it's the true story of a Czech woman who fell in love with an Afghan man and went to Afghanistan and married him, and what she experiences there as a white woman married into a Muslim family in Afghanistan. And it's said, it's in first person, and it's absolutely wonderful, and it's so different. It somehow does not, it's not your usual cliche, oh, you know, the Muslims just repress or oppress women. It shows that, but it shows that in a different way. And I think it's very, very interesting.
Probably a more honest and holistic approach to showing it.
It's a much more holistic approach, and it uses different modes of storytelling that are woven into, you know, into the stories. So it's it's not like any other film one will have seen, I think.
That's very cool.
And animation has this ability to show things that live action.
And it can also kind of take you out of just sort of the physical realm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It has a transportive effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Another film from the US, actually, called The Falconer, is a documentary by Annie Kempfer. And it's really, we follow this African-American man who is a falconer. But really, the whole idea behind the film, and he talks about his life, is how he had a traumatic childhood, and it shows how people generally, not just this guy in the film, how people generally can, after trauma, redefine themselves by connecting to nature.
Oh, wow.
He becomes a falconer, he understands birds, and he passes on this thing. So, and it's really also about the experience of being black in America. So it's about it's a lovely film.
It sounds like kind of like The Onion.
Yes,
There's a lot of layers.
Exactly.
A lot of layers there, which are my favorite kind of Vermont International Festival films.
Yeah.
And do you have one more?
Sure, one more now. Which one shall? Okay, let's go to South Korea.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a film called Decision to Leave, which is this year's, or rather the 2023 South Korea's submission to the Oscars by a fantastic filmmaker called Park Chan-wook. And it already got the Best Director in the Cannes Film Festival, and it's getting more awards everywhere. And it's a thriller. It's a thriller about sexual obsession, but there's no sex in it. How about that? And it's sort of inspired, the cinematic language is sort of inspired by the way Hitchcock constructed his thrillers.
Well, thrillers are all about suspense.
Exactly, but it's adapted to a Korean action movie style.
Wow.
So it's absolutely amazing cinematically and
Visually striking.
visually very, very striking. And every frame is like a painting. And, you know, Park really knows how to block a scene and editing. And yeah, what can I say?
Oh, that sounds exciting.
It's close to being a masterpiece.
Orly just
Close,
said that.
close.
She does not say that
Close.
lightly. That's a big push.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. Yeah. So this year, we're excited about the festival. It's coming. I have a personal vested interest. It is coming to the Main Street Landing Performing Arts Center with a satellite venue at the Savoy Theater in Montpelier, which is very exciting. It's also going to be digitally online.
Some films,
Some films.
not all.
Thank you, Orly. Some of the films will be digitally online, but we recommend you guys get out and come see some films. Late October is a great time.
Because what else is there to do in October?
The foliage is over.
Skiing hasn't started.
Skiing hasn't started. It's basically stick season. And this year we're going to have quite the slate of epic and incredible films. A lot of these were probably made over the pandemic when people were very reflexive and had a lot of time to dig deep and create some great visual art. So Orly, I just also want to take a second and thank you so much for all you've done for the Burlington community, for the Vermont community, for creating such a dynamic film foundation.
I didn't create it.
And I can't tell you enough how happy I am that I've been fortunate enough to spend the last decade working with this wonderful woman to help bring the festival to Burlington.
Well, we love being at Main Street Landing Performing Arts Center, and you're always such a great help. There are a lot of technical issues to be dealt with, and Mariah is a technical ace.
And if you don't notice them, that we've done our job very, very well.
Exactly.
So thank you all very much. Make sure to check out the Vermont International Film Foundation website. If you're interested in volunteering at the festival, I believe there are perks for volunteering at the festival.
Free films.
Free films. So if you're really into
meeting
it,
interesting people.
yes. And if you're younger and you don't have a chance, maybe you can't afford to go see the films, volunteering is a great way to get involved and see some great cinema. So upcoming this fall, keep a lookout for it. And make sure you check out the Vermont International Film Foundation website at www.vtiff.org. And thank you guys all so much for participating with us this month. Thank you, Orly, for coming in and talking with
Mariah.
me. And we'll see you right back here next month. Take care.